Board games, board games is what we're talking about. Board games and sustainability, I'm not gonna shout. Over there to this side of me, here are the people known as Ree and Laurie, and we're talking about carbon neutrality, as they did in their Kickstarter, which you can see. I'll flash it up on screen. I'll flash it up on screen. That's what I mean. It's now going away, and now I'll start to say about the things that carbon neutrality means and how it was done, and in the process of making a game that will hopefully also be fun. Board games and board games is what we're talking about. Board games and carbon neutrality, or maybe even positivity. I'm not gonna shout. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. And hello, Ree and Laurie. Thank you for joining.
No worries. All right. It's been a while.
Yeah, and hello, Alex. Thank you for jumping in. Resident also musician, and for those who are unaware, this is the I can't remember what number it says. It's hopefully in the show title. This is episode 400 something of Bezzy Beats and Briefer Blether, and today we are having Laurie and Ree, who took steps to make their game carbon neutral in their most recent Kickstarter, and this was a really cool thing. I think it's kind of, sorry for the quick scroll, it's somewhere.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. And we will talk all about that and talk all about what this means, because what I want to know is how you start off working out how much carbon is being produced by this in order to how much I can offset it. Because surely, in theory, you can pay for carbon offsetting no matter what. But, as a business, you do still need to make a profit, and you do still need to get that game out there. Now, in my own mind, as a also self-publisher, I'm wondering, is this something that I could incorporate even into the Bezzy budget bags? Would it work? Because frankly, to an extent, if it needs to raise the price of the Bezzy budget bags from £5 to £7, that is still more in line with my personal values. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's what you've got to do at this point. Got to do is a strong word, but I feel it's what I would choose to do. And I hope that other people will also be similarly inspired. And yeah, Alex, such a troll. How much carbon neutrality it takes. Apparently, it takes 425. I don't know what unit that is or whatever. But anyway, would you like to quickly introduce the topic and give people a sneak of what we're going to talk about? It's episode 425. Thank you very much, Alex. Sorry about that. That makes so much more sense.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things I wanted to start off with regards to like how do you make a sort of carbon neutral sort of sustainable game is the concept of sort of carbon neutrality and sustainability are both the same and also very different things, because carbon is one part of the stress that we put on our world, and it's one part of the emissions that we have the potential to put out. So take, for example, everyone knows that plastic is a big problem. It causes quite a lot of, there you go, case in point. Very, very nicely demonstrated, Bez. Thank you. So it's a big problem. It causes a lot of waste. It causes a lot of sort of toxic chemicals leach into the environment where it's been dumped, etc. And basically,
the point being that carbon neutrality alone is not enough. We need to look at it from a more holistic point of view.
Exactly.
And let's not let ourselves get fooled or let other people fool us to say, hey, this is carbon positive, therefore it's good for the environment, because that might actually be hogwash.
That's it. So the thing is that where I was going with that was basically that plastic doesn't emit any carbon at all. hypothetically speaking, you could argue that plastic is, depending on how it's produced, a carbon neutral product. But nonetheless, it still has different effects. So it, as you say, that sort of wide-reaching, that entirely looking at things from all the different angles of how we can have an effect is really important. So one last also thing before we move on, which is hello, Tabletop Games Vlog. It's good to see you.
Hey, Oliver.
So yeah, one of the main things that I wanted to quickly check was when you say carbon neutral and carbon positive, what's your intended meaning with that?
Are you asking me? Because I was going to ask you. That was one of the questions to define it. Like, I was thinking that, I mean, as I understand it, it's to do with the overall emissions that if there's excess carbon dioxide, then, you know, it's damaging for the planet. But if we plant trees, then they trap more carbon dioxide. That's basically the gist of it, right?
That's pretty reasonable, yeah. So as you said, as people quite often know now, trees are fantastic carbon sequesters, and it takes a while, but they're pretty much the best thing we have on land. However, an important thing I think is worth noting is when you say carbon positive, in the scientific world, that will actually mean more carbon. Whereas in general people terms, when something is positive, it's positive in a good way. And so there's a weird kind of communication difficulty when talking about sustainability, about what you mean to say and what seems obvious in an English sense, and also what it actually means in a scientific sense. And I think that can trip a lot of people up.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you need to make sure when someone says carbon positive or carbon negative, what actually do they mean, and check in with that. Yeah. Because scientifically, I guess you should have said your project is ideally carbon negative.
Right. Yeah.
But that would make people think bad. I mean, yeah. But you do explain what's going on, and I think it's fairly obvious what you meant. No, and totally. It's kind of like the terms positive feedback loop, negative feedback loop. Right, when we're talking about games and systems, for those who are unaware, a positive feedback loop is something that essentially escalates the system. So whether it's a virtuous cycle or a vicious cycle, both of those are a positive feedback loop. The term positive feedback loop doesn't give any value judgment to whether this is a good or bad thing. It just means that it increases the potency of what's going on. And that in a game, that might be a runaway leader, but it might also be an engine building game. And there, you know, a positive feedback loop is a great thing when you've got that personal positive feedback. And conversely, a negative feedback loop might be a catch-up mechanism, but it might actually be in a different part of a game, something that means that the game never finishes, which would also be a very terrible thing. So all of these things could be good or bad depending on context. But because based on carbon, if we sequester carbon, because that seems more, you know, less prone to confusion, that if we capture carbon, then that's always good for the world, right? And if we emit carbon, that's always bad, right?
Yeah. So
I mean, obviously we are breathing, and I'm not suggesting we suddenly have, you know, mass suicide.
That's it. So this is the thing, is that hypothetically speaking, it would be impossible to ever be the term of carbon negative, because hypothetically speaking, we as human beings, by our very need to survive and play the game and everything else, and even come up with the game, we're creating carbon. We are part of that cycle.
What it comes down to is having the means to sequester and remove more carbon than we are producing. And the fact is, the fact that we breathe and that keeps trees alive. You know, carbon is important in that way. They thrive. Plants thrive on carbon.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can't stop making it, but what we can do is up the amount we can sequester.
But the issue is, as I understand it, that humans, yeah, sure, there is an argument that there are too many of us on the planet. That's a separate issue that we're not going to get into for this episode. But the issue, as I see it, is that the magnitude of scale of producing a game of since the Industrial Revolution, essentially, whilst I am all for technology and I think it's a fantastic thing. And, you know, I'm chatting to you on the internet, which wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago, let alone in the 19 whatevers, frankly. But since the Industrial Revolution, it does seem like the order of magnitude has shifted.
Extremely much so, yes. And you mentioned, you know, games, produce a certain amount of carbon when they're made. Actually, the majority of the output in terms of carbon comes from freight shipping, and it also comes from where well, effectively, it's still part of that, moving a load of games across, distribution, across the country and also get them to their backers. Which means that because games are majoritively cardboard or plastic or similar kind of materials, they don't actually produce very much carbon, unless, of course, the power plant used to power the factory is a coal plant, in which case that's a different matter. But generally speaking, the actual production of the game itself, it doesn't really produce much carbon at all. So where carbon offsetting specifically comes really into play is when you are offsetting your shipments. So any distribution, any fulfillment, anything like that, you can track the distance that's used, the method it's used by, and therefore on average, because you're never going to be able to get it exactly, on average, how much carbon is that going to roughly produce? And that's where offsetting comes into play. And that's, I think, the most important thing to recognize. In terms of producing games, that's where you need to start looking at other things.
I think that's a critical thing. It's going to be impossible to measure perfectly, but let's take a wee break. Let's go for our regular sections and then come back and we'll chat about how you measured that. How do you even know what kind of energy to use? How do you get these details from the factory? I mean, yeah, we'll talk about your partners and all sorts of things. But first of all, let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So my recent highlight, and anyone in the chat, feel free to share your recent highlights also. One of my recent highlights is definitely going over to see my lovely friend Layla. We played a couple of games. One of the games was a game about grabbing creatures that are totally different and watching out for turnips. This was the first time that I'd played with the turnip rule. So you see the title's changing as the game changes. But the turnip rule didn't quite work because I was hoping we'd run out of everything that wasn't a turnip. But yeah, I'm going to have to ponder it a bit more. This is a totally different game. Happy Pigs, I had nothing to do with it. It's published by Yellow, done by a couple of people I can't remember the name of, but it's an economic game. This is called Happy Pigs. It's not about happiness at all. It's just about brutal money making. Look at that. Do those pigs look happy? Yes, they are vaccinated, which means it's all about the vaccinations. This game is actually becoming pretty topical. If you don't vaccine people, they die. It's as brutal as that. Every season you need to vaccinate pigs. But the vaccines do survive through, like, while they grow up. Obviously, like, if a pig grows up, it's still vaccinated. But if a new baby pig gets born, you need to vaccine that baby as well, or you sell it for the bacon festival or the ham festival, as it's called in winter. And it's very, it's kind of weird because this is the most animalizing, I don't want to say dehumanizing, but you know what I mean? It's like the animalizing of animals, and it's like a pure vicious economic game. The only reason you have these pigs is to make money. The victory points are your money. The only points of these pigs is to grow them up, to breed new pigs, which turn into money. And that is what it's all about. There are cards that do special things, but it's a good game, even if the theme is a bit vicious. And so Firstly, hello, Dutch Yoda. It's lovely to see you. Alex asks, if the pig gets poorly, do you give them a blanket? I like that. The pig business is a big business. That is very true.
Yeah.
Lots of love. Have a wonderful day, Oliver. And Yoda chips in with their own recent highlight. Wow, winning 21-7. What kind of match is this? Is this football? Is this hockey? I don't know what you're playing, or is this some sort of board game?
Yeah.
But
either way, congratulations.
Yeah.
But yeah. Any comments on this? Any thoughts on your own? Oh, it's softball. There we go. Well, congratulations. Okay. That is quite the margin.
That's
we
so higher.
One of our highlights would probably be that we actually had quite a big win last night, didn't we? Because we streamed a live playthrough with the whole SDR team playing Earthrising, and despite being the designer of the game and playing it probably close to 200 times, Laurie had his first perfect victory.
Yeah. A perfect victory in Earthrising is where you've got basically you're able to not only succeed and win, but get every single person possible out of poverty at the same time. So effectively, I've managed to complete.
So you've basically created utopia.
Yeah, that's it, right? It's like it's the absolute hardest thing to do.
Although, even though everyone's out of poverty, there might still be arguments and mean people, and yeah, it's probably not actually utopia.
Let's be honest. Any utopia that has humans in it isn't perfect. It's just able to support everyone. So that's the difference. But nonetheless, it was our first time, even though we've been playing, testing, and all of this sort of stuff for like nearly 2 years now. It was our first time managing a perfect game, so we're very pleased with that.
Congratulations! It seems like lots of successes all round. And Alex had a good playtest session last night. The game's changing a lot, but each version seems better than before. That is exactly what you want. I would say, don't be afraid of, going away from a local maxima in order to find something even better down the line. Because sometimes I like to say, it's worth trying a crazy change just for the sake of it, just to explore the game. But I think you know enough about what you're doing, Alex. I trust you that you're going to make an excellent game. Keep it up.
Excellent.
So, those are some recent highlights, and now the next section is, of course, Questionably Quick Questions is the next section. It's not an interrogation, it's not an insurrection, it's not a revolution, it's not our destruction, everything will be fine. The Questionably Quick Questions should be benign. So yes, please share any questionably quick questions that you have, but whilst they are coming, I would like, Ree, if you have anything to say about a brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Oh, brilliant.
I mean, your hair's pretty brilliant. May I just say? Sorry, it's weird because I was reminded recently that it's not the best thing to compliment someone on something they naturally have, because it's not like you worked for the hair or you chose to grow it the length it is. So, the length it is excellent.
I mean, to be fair, I like to think I also stuck with it, considering, any other ginger will understand that it is hell growing up ginger.
Mm-hmm.
And you're torn between little old ladies who tell you never dye your hair, and everyone else in school who calls you names, basically. So thank you. I appreciate that. Brilliant things. I think my brilliant thing for the day is the fact that Tobin, our dog, who is hiding away, he's fast asleep, had a really big leap forward in his training the other day.
Aww.
I took him into the vets, which is a place he absolutely despises. He didn't scream once, and he even stood on the scales like a good boy.
Very good.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
How old is Tobin?
He is almost 2, we think. He's a rescue, so it's sort of iffy.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yes. There we go. So dogs are brilliant, and having a companion and an animal companion with whom you can share love, that is a brilliant thing. So shall we move on to the questionably quick questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. Why do you not wear contact lenses, Ree?
I actually only need my glasses for reading, and I don't like poking myself in the eyes.
Good reason. Laurie.
Also would like me to answer?
Sorry, I just meant Ree to go first.
That's okay. I used to wear contacts all the time, and to be honest with you, I guess post-quarantine, I just got out of the habit of putting them in, and then it just kind of stuck, and I haven't gotten back into the habit yet. So, yeah, ultimately, though, what I really want is I really want to get laser eye surgery, and then I can get rid of these bloody things once and for all.
If anyone's wondering, that's about myself. I did investigate contacts for a while, but it was deemed that my eyes are generally too dry. Like, it's not that they'll be damaged or anything naturally, but the slight exacerbation that the contacts would put on it might lead to some problems later on. So it was suggested that doing contacts would not be a good choice for me. But yeah, with these, if you fall into water, you lose your specs. I say this from experience, having fallen off Monkey Island. It's the actual place, which is called Monkey Island.
Amazing.
Next question. If you had to fill up a bath with any unusual substance or material, what would you pick? I'll let you discuss this.
Okay.
Probably, the little balls you get in beanbags?
Yes.
The simple reason that you will never get rid of them ever again. They are part of you. They live in your house. They live with you. You have them for life. And I know this because we did fill up a beanbag, and I think it took us 3 house moves to lose all of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They just stick to you like static.
I thought you were going to give like 3 months or something, but 3 house moves.
3 house moves, yeah.
Yeah. I think
So you want to encourage this? You want to revel in this? You're.
No, I'm a chaos goblin. I love the chaos. I want everyone to experience that chaos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't mention that it had to be our bath. This isn't in our house. We're doing it to someone else.
Oh, okay. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think if I was going to fill up a bath with anything, so long as it could be a sufficiently big bath, I would want to fill it with ball pond balls. Those brightly coloured little balls, and then that way, you can just get in it and just be like, yeah, I'm having a bath. But you're not really. You don't have to get wet. You can just send balls flying everywhere. It would be the best.
You just want a ball pit, basically.
I do just want a ball pit. It's true.
I mean, that's what makes me think that the okay, sure, these things go everywhere, but I feel like if I had that bath and also a separate bath to have with water, that would actually be quite fun. Like a ball pit with these tiny balls. Yes, sure, they get stuck to everything, but it might be worth it. Okay, what is the latest game you played that wasn't Earth-Rising?
What did we played Dungeon Mayhem, but I feel like we played something after that. Was it Carcassonne?
Yeah, we played Carcassonne quite recently.
Oh, actually, no. Mine was Bonanza. I played Bonanza at work the other day.
How many players?
3.
It
was the first
so
time
standard rules.
Yeah.
Have you found? I feel like with Bonanza, like the 2-player variance is really interesting. I mean, it's not got much in the way of trading because you can't really have a trading game, but it works really well and it captures a wee bit of it. But I feel like the ideal Bonanza is maybe 4, 5. What do you think?
Yeah, I gotta say, I feel like more players would have made it better. We didn't actually end up seeing the game all the way through because you're meant to go through the deck 3 times, I think. 3 of us, and it was part of my shift at work as well. We just went through the deck once, but I think that the trading would get a lot more interesting with more players.
With more players, I think it's more likely that you'll have people who want that thing or are able to move into the thing that you're offering.
Yeah.
And how about you, Laurie?
So I'll be honest with you, I haven't had the chance to play weird and wonderful board games in far too long. But nonetheless, I have recently got me Disarm the Base from Descent Games, which I am absolutely gagging to play. I am.
No, that doesn't count. I didn't ask what was the last game you got. So, like, it sounds like Carcassonne is the answer. Whenever that was.
I don't want it to be Carcassonne because I played it a million times. And we just wanted some time away from the screen.
The question isn't what would you like the last game you ever played to be. It's what was.
Not just cheap, Laurie.
Fine, it was Carcassonne.
When was that?
Oh gosh, a week ago? Yeah, about a week ago.
Good one.
I agree with Alex. Carcassonne is great. Don't be ashamed of it.
It's great.
For me, I think that's out of what Asmodee calls the modern classics, because to be fair, they do own a lot of titles. I mean, since the conglomerate, bought a lot of companies. Oh, what happened there? I think that they just lost their internet. But I do think that Carcassonne is my favourite all of them. I think that now that Ticket to Ride has... Oh, they're back. Yay,
Okay,
you're back.
No idea what happened there.
But I was just saying that, yeah, Carcassonne is my favourite of what they call the modern classics. Yeah, apparently got really offended about having to admit Carcassonne.
So the trouble is, right, is the reason for that is because I've played Carcassonne so many times, and everybody has played Carcassonne, and like, I'm a grassroots board game designer. I'm supposed to be playing weird, wacky, and wonderful things, and so when I turn around and go, yeah, I played a game of Carcassonne, like
It's fine.
It's not exciting.
It's fine. Like, you are allowed to keep playing the games that you love, that you know you enjoy.
At least it wasn't Monopoly. Eh?
Yeah, God, yeah, okay, fair.
Oh, and hello, Amadeus. It's lovely and delightful to see you. Thank you very much. Alex, if you could give Amadeus a shout out, that would be awesome. So Amadeus, for those who don't know, is a super talented keyboardist, and definitely go and check them out. But yeah, Alex says he just wanted to be Carcassonne. So the question is Bonanza the best trading card game ever, in your opinion? I mean, I can't think of a better one. This is very much inspired, I think, by Actual All's recent video. But, I mean, I would prefer I'm the Boss, but I can't think of a better trading card game.
You know what? I've not actually played that many trading card games, so I don't feel like I should really get to make a decision here. But given my limited experience, I'm going to say yes.
I mean, some people might suggest Pit, which is like that fast-paced one, if you know that one, where it's real time. You're just swapping, okay, two cards, and once you've got an all of one kind, then you win that round, and then everyone else scores negative according to how many different things you've got, and then you pass it around. And Alex also asks, would you rather have a meeple-sized duck or a duck-sized meeple?
Meeple-sized duck. I want a duck, not a meeple.
The trouble with that is, I was thinking about this one. Yes, it would be really, really tiny. It'd be really cheap and easy to feed. Yeah. But nonetheless, I worry that I'd sit on it.
Well, you'd have a little duck pen for it, wouldn't you? Like a tiny little pond. And imagine, you just have to hold it up to your ear to hear it quack.
So here's the thing. Would it, despite being really tiny, would it still have a normal quack? Or would it actually be pitch shifted up because it's so tiny? It's going,
I think it would have a really deep quack, personally. Really.
I think it would be a soft one, like
yeah.
Yeah, that you can barely hear unless you put it right up to your ear.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
wisdom, tiny duck.
Those were some good questionably quick questions. Let's get back to the main topic, which is all about carbon neutrality. We've discussed what this means, but so basically what we're saying is, to summarize, it's not the sum total. We also need to worry about plastics, but that might be a separate discussion. But what we need to first work out is how much carbon is being emitted in the process of making the board game, and then how can we capture that same amount or more, and only then can we even begin to say that we're being environmentally conscious. Is that a fair way to put it?
I don't want to put up barriers to people being able to say they're environmentally conscious, because
that's a very good point.
Any efforts are good efforts.
And
if someone isn't able to cut out all their carbon, but they are able to do things like cut out their plastic, and they are able to do things like use recycled card or card that doesn't use clay or similar.
FSC wood.
Yeah, FSC wood, that sort of thing. All those efforts are positive steps. And so as a result, sort of going, oh, but if you're not doing this, none of that counts, is really unfair. So yeah, I think the main takeaway from efforts towards sustainability is the harder anyone pushes to use sustainable board games and to manufacture sustainable board games, the more the industry will evolve as a result. More and more manufacturers are offering these methods of manufacture now than ever before. A lot of them have only just brought out a whole bunch of new methods in which people can use those things. And that's only because people are asking for it. And the more people who ask for it, the more people who put their money into that, the more those manufacturers go, okay, we'll provide that then, because that's clearly what you want. And ultimately, in a world that depends on manufacturing, that's the only way to change it. So, yeah, that would be my biggest push. My biggest message, if I were to say to anyone, is so long as you're doing something, so long as you're making those manufacturers take note that people want those things, then you're making positive steps.
Do you think there is more responsibility upon people who are making decisions in bigger companies? For example, Days of Wonder, Cosmos.
100%. I mean, if you're making more things, then you have more of an impact. So therefore, if someone, I mean, Alex has just said Hasbro in your comments.
They're doing good work. Thank you.
We also noted Asmodee earlier. Asmodee's the second largest after Hasbro. If those two were to champion sustainable production in their board games, it would revolutionize the board game industry overnight. Manufacturers would completely change how they do things.
And it would make it a lot easier for smaller companies and grassroots designers to do the same.
Yeah, people say, oh, but sustainable manufacturing is expensive. Well, yes, it's expensive because not enough people are doing it for the manufacturers to make it cheap. So the more people who do it, the more it's able to be, what's it called? It's not subsidized, but it's like, effectively, the board game industry entirely works off the more you buy, the cheaper it becomes. You'll know this, Bez, from your own production runs. And generally speaking, the more people who buy sustainable produce, as a result, yes, scalability is what Alex has just said, absolutely. So, the more people who buy into a certain type of product, as a result, that becomes cheaper. And the only reason that, plastics and unsustainable cardboard and other things like that are cheap is because they are the standard.
I know that when I looked around to get rid of plastics from it will be forthcoming, I promise you. It's just that the last year has been really difficult, categorical.
Can't get away from it in our society,
But at least in my manufacturing of categorical, I'm thinking, okay, I don't need a plastic around the cards because the box is already, sure, it might scuff around, and if you look over a microscope, if it was a trading card game and people were like, oh, this is mint, this is near mint, 7 out of 10, oh my gosh, how dare you have these things that I can only see with like jeweler's glass, then sure, it would be tarnished. But for real play, I mean, I have played with the L deck Wibble Plus Plus Deluxe in the rain, and then let them get wet, and then brought them back in, laid out the cards on a bit of cloth, let them get wet, and let them get dry on the cloth, and after a while it's okay, these are fine, they're not marked. Sure, again, if you looked at them, like if they were cards that you want, they were collectible trading cards, I could see the anguish. I wouldn't want to take out my Magic the Gathering card, some of which I don't have any super expensive things, but some of them I believe I could sell for like a tenner or something, and I've got them actually in a little box at some point when I've got the energy. I'm going to sell them all for, hopefully a couple of £100. But I wouldn't take those into the rain. I can't imagine people playing Magic the Gathering when it continues to rain. But for a game that you can buy for 15 quid to replace the entire thing, and there's nothing collectible about it, I don't think we need to be so precious. I think that this idea, sure, it's important that I've gotten a game from Amazon, which was literally just a postage thing on the box, and that was it. There was no outside packaging. It was obviously not direct from Amazon. It was from someone else on the Amazon marketplace, and that's just ridiculous. I mean, the box is part of the product. With a board game, you keep it on the shelf.
Absolutely.
But when you're like, don't be such a perfectionist that if it's slightly scuffed, you have to change it. Like, I think that part of the environmental impact is because if we get clothes and then, oh, there's a tear, sure, if you're too lazy or you don't have the time or energy or knowledge, which kind of applies to me, to do repairs, fine. But if you're throwing that away, that seems really wasteful. Like, maybe someone else would be happy with it, or maybe puts it into some fabric recycling place.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I'm getting slightly off topic. I did want to give a shout out to Haba, who has been doing good work for quite a few years. If anyone's not aware of Haba, they make lovely games, quite often for children, in a yellow box, quite a lot of wood bits, and when you look through all the things that they talk about, it's really good. And where they had a bit about their wood, which I can't find just now. But let's go back to carbon neutrality. Firstly, how do we measure the amount of carbon we're emitting if we're making a game?
So it's as I said before, the majority of the carbon that is emitted from a game that is manufactured majoritively comes from the shipping and fulfillment of it. Now, the good news about this is that you're able to, you will find out when you are having your game shipped, wherever it may be coming from, and all of that sort of thing is, you're able to understand where it's starting from. You're able to understand how far it's traveling to go to, hypothetically, a port or an airport. And then from there, you're able to understand what route it most likely is going to be taking to get to another port. As a result, it's very, very unlikely you're going to be able to get an answer from any kind of company about what fuel they use. Especially from shipping companies, because shipping companies, by and large, really cut corners when it comes to fuel because they don't give a damn. In case anyone doesn't know, the freight shipping world of logistics in terms of ships is one of the most dirtiest industries, second only to like oil and meat. So it's pretty awful. Nonetheless, you're not going to be able to get a straight answer about the fuel they use, but you can use an effective approximate. There will be emission calculating websites where you effectively put in, okay, this is the mileage, this is the type of vehicle, this is the approximate kind of fuel, and it will go, okay, that should come to about this much.
Okay, can we get into specifics? Can you, sorry, Ree, if you were about to say something, please go ahead. I was just going to ask you to talk about what exactly you did for Earth Rising.
With Earth Rising, the biggest thing we did is talk to the manufacturers and get their viewpoints on everything, because a lot of the manufacturers were like, yeah, we offer sustainability options, we can make our wood. It's like, that's great. Not necessarily sustainable.
Yeah.
But sure, let's talk. And we actually, the first decisions we made before looking into the carbon and everything else was based on their attitude towards sustainability. And that was part of the reason we went with Hero Time, was because they were like, yes, we love sustainability. That is something that is really important to us. And from that point, you can guess that their factories and their manufacturing practices are going to be as clean as possible anyway.
Yeah. One of the really important things to note about FSC certification is it also takes into consideration worker quality as well. So it's not just a certification about like where the product comes from, but also about how the product is grown in terms of ethically and all that sort of thing as well. So if something is FSC certified, such as the wood or the card or anything like that, then you know that it has been grown and what's the word? I'm thinking harvested. Thank you. From a place that is both positive and ethical.
But yeah, then Hero Time did also suggest to us, because we questioned about their shipping methods and distribution, and they did actually mention that they wanted to look into alternative methods of shipping the games. So they wanted to look into trains.
That's right, trains, yeah. Yeah, and as I mentioned before about shipping, ships are incredibly dirty, and as a result, by doing it by train, because there are less trains, it is therefore more expensive, but because it is trains are majoritively electricity run, it's able to go far, far further with far, far fewer carbon. So in as best a case as possible, trains would be a far better means of transporting goods than ships. The difficulty is that there's far more open space on an ocean.
So also, because we are using sustainable materials, there's not a case of we're using carbon to create the game. So the carbon neutrality is it's really difficult to say at this point, because until we have our order sorted, until we know where we're going to be shipping to, and until we can actually do those calculations, because I'm not going to lie, we haven't done them yet because we can't until we have those numbers.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to run you through that process, but what we will be doing is we will be using those calculators. We will be taking into account the maximum journey everything will be taking. Depending on whether or not we're having to use ships or trains, that will counter into it. And then based on that, we will know how many trees we have to plant.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to work out the manufacturing carbon cost?
So obviously a lot of that depends on what Hero Time tell us. We are entirely dependent on, believing what they say. We have to assume that they're being legitimate about those things. And so as a result, we effectively have to basically calculate it based on that.
What are the questions that I should be asking if I'm reaching out to a manufacturer and saying, well, how many units of carbon go into one game? I wouldn't know where to begin.
Well, the most important thing would be to ask where they have their energy supplied. So if they have their energy supplied from green electricity, so be it solar or wind, or in some very few cases like geothermal or similar, they'll be carbon neutral sources of energy. That's fantastic. So that will cut out.
What you're looking for.
Yeah, you absolutely. If you can get that, that's perfect. There isn't always the option, but if they've got the option in China, I'll be shocked if they don't have the option in Europe. America is a little bit more spotty in regards to its power sources, and so as a result, you can't really guarantee it. So those are really good things to look out for, and the majority of the carbon of game production will come from its power source, because ultimately most of the requirements for making a game are cutting, printing, and shaping. So
they're all electronically powered machines.
Absolutely.
So if the electricity that powers the factories isn't green, then the production isn't green.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and if something's running off the national grid, then basically what you have to do is to make a calculation on what the national grid tends to be, and then ask them how many watts or kilowatts of energy they're using. Is that how it would work?
So I suppose the difficulty here is, like, what's a percentage of a percentage? Because, like, if you start thinking about it in terms of a national grid, that's a huge amount of power created. That factory is using a percentage of that power, and realistically a very small percentage. And then in that in turn of that, your game will be using a percentage of the power they are using in order to create your particular game. So what does that come to? As a result, it's not really something that you can really calculate. And so as a result, you sort of have to go, okay, if my company isn't using renewable energy, then, and I don't feel comfortable with that, either A, change company, or B, you need to sort of go, right, well, I think I just want to put a certain amount of carbon offsetting into a carbon offsetting supplier that I believe in, I agree with in terms of the things they're putting that money into. And as a result, you kind of go, right, I think, this is going to effectively be a pay it forward in good faith rather than an exact calculation.
Sure, but you want to have an idea of like at least the magnitude of scale. So,
Yep.
like let's say I want to do a third edition. Let's assume a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after someone makes noises has gone out to people. Let's say I've decided to make a third edition with 80 new creatures and I've drawn a bunch of new creatures. I want to share them with everyone. I want to make another Bezzy budget bag, and there would be a plastic bag because it is just so much cheaper. But yeah, we can talk about that plastic separately, but what would I be thinking about? Would I be asking Rob, okay, how many watts are you using? And then I assume that it's because the national grid tends to be dirty fuel, assume that that fuel is dirty. Can you walk me through the calculation somewhat?
I think it would also mainly be to do with how long the machines are running. I may be wrong there.
There are so many factors.
The manufacturers may struggle to tell you how many watts their machines use.
So basically this is why at the beginning I said about how the primary problems that come from game production is more waste and materials than it is carbon. So if you are to make another Bezzy budget bag and you were to use either recycled or sustainable cardboard or both, and you were to use, it would entirely depend on the game, but let's say, for example, you used little wooden counters instead of little plastic counters, they're not actually that much different in price, and those are FSC wood, etc., then effectively you would be doing enough offset in terms of waste for it to have been worth whatever small power usage that a factory would make by comparison. That would be a worthy trade. As far as what that means in terms of the real world, it's, yes, Alex just mentioned bulb. Octopus is another one in the UK. There will be options throughout the different countries that are offering these. And basically it is about, okay, so let's say you offset the shipping and all the rest of it, but you use loads of plastic stuff and that ends up in, say, let's be really, really generous, 50 years, it ends up in a landfill. That then leaches down into the ground and causes problems then. By using renewable materials for your game, you're meaning that you're not paying the damage that isn't, like, you're not meaning there's damage in the future. It means that that's ended there. So that's
because plastics from recycled materials are quite thin on the ground. Are baggies from, like, I'm just picking up, this was the closest one. Are baggies with recycled plastic something that you can actually get?
That's a good question, and I think that entirely depends on the manufacturer. It's really possible, because ultimately plastics are just melted down.
They do exist.
Yeah,
they definitely do exist. Whether or not board game manufacturers can provide them is a completely different question.
Well, I mean, they could come in from another source. And
they could.
True.
Yes. So you could have the baggies that you wanted, be they plastic or otherwise, and sent to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer then packages them into the rest of the game. So that's absolutely an option. Well said. So yes. However, the bonus of recycled plastic is that you're not making more. That's good. That's good. It doesn't mean there's less plastic. It just means, in your regard, you haven't increased it. Okay, it's a step forward. It's not like how to put it. It hasn't actually done any positivity. However, that's the difference.
Sure, it hasn't improved the situation, but hopefully the game is still bringing joy into the world. And if I can not harm the world by doing this, then I think that is.
Yeah.
I think that is what I am aiming for, frankly.
Absolutely.
With game
yeah,
manufacturing.
Recycle plastic. If you feel
Just
your
be
game
neutral.
is something plastic, recycle plastic is the way to go.
So to come back to, because I know you want the equations that we do, the calculations.
Yeah.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I handle social media. I don't really do this end of things so much, but I have to convince people it's a good idea. Our focus on carbon and carbon neutrality is more to do with the shipping side of the game than the manufacturing. Our focus on sustainability is in the manufacturing, because the way we've looked at it and the people we've spoken to, it's more to do with the materials you use to make the game and less and how you ship it when it comes to carbon than it is about carbon during manufacturing processes.
Actually, I've just thought of a really good visual way to kind of do it. And if you don't mind, you before we started, you had that image of Earth rising. Do you want to just get it up for a second? And I can kind of use it almost as the tiered thing. Yeah. So if we look at the board here, it's just a really good way of showing the segments. So if you look at the center ring and you imagine that each one of these rings is, like in the game, it's a type of burden that it's putting on the planet. So in the red one here at the side, you've got the politics one, and the next one to it is energy, etc. We're looking at different ways in which our society or our manufacturing process, in the case of a game, is potentially damaging our world or contributing to the damage that is put on our world. So if you, let's call the purple one, let's call that plastic, let's call the red one carbon, let's call the orange one, what's another one?
Wood.
Yeah, wood. So each of these, every one that you are able to sort of go, okay, this is no longer a problem, is a positive thing. If you've got this whole ring and all of them are a problem, like, you know, various games by Hasbro or Asmodee or whatever that are full of all of these things, and there are hundreds of thousands of them and they're shipped everywhere, then okay, that's significantly contributing to that problem. Any one of those segments that you take out is a positive thing. That's really good. So if you're like, okay, well, I still need plastic, I still need to carbon, I still want to carbon offset, but I'm not able to measure it properly, or like I don't think there's very much of it, so I'm not going to do it. But I can use FSC certified wooden card, and I can manufacture in a local area to where the majority of my backers are. At that point, you're already making 2 segments worth of really good progress. That's to be celebrated. So it's important to look at what your game means and go, which of these can I make better? And that's how you decide, ultimately.
Well, this, again, I understand that it sounds like there, and it is an incredibly unsatisfying answer, of course, and that's the way of the world. Sometimes everything is incredibly unsatisfying, but it sounds like there's no way to measure, and there's a lot of guesswork from what you're saying. So, like, if I'm shipping, as I will be soon, about 500 envelopes potentially to people around the UK, because let's say these envelopes are they are apparently recyclable plastic, but then what does that even mean? Like, how do I measure the impact of this, and also the impact of this being shipped within the UK 500 times? And let's say if next time I'm working with someone in Poland, and the person in Poland is shipping all the things individually to people in the USA, and America and UK. How do I start to measure that? How do I even begin?
So Laurie is dyscalculic, which means we literally just use carbon calculators online. There are so many different types of carbon calculators. There is one on gov.uk. It is the McKay carbon calculator. It's an Excel version. It gives you options of things you can put in. You will need to figure out the mileage of how far those envelopes are going, and that will take some time. But once you have that, obviously you assume it's being moved by a petrol-run vehicle or diesel or whatever. And then you put that into the calculator and it does all the work for you. This isn't something we work out ourselves. We don't have a special formula. We just use the resources that are already there because the scientists have done the work for us, basically.
Are you able to share that in the private chat so I can?
Definitely.
Yep. Give me 2 seconds.
And I think that when Alex, I know you are completely joking. Honestly, Bez, I think you just need to hand deliver all the copies by bicycle. Then you just have to measure the carbon impacts of your bicycle and your food. And I think this is what Laurie was talking about right at the start, that even if you're not doing everything, even if you're doing some of the things, it is at least a step in the right direction. There's also a really interesting question, slightly less trolly. I know it's difficult to measure, but do you think there could be a carbon offsetting service that puts your donation more towards lobbying for tighter environmental regulations?
So this is why 50% of our profits are going to charities. Because, carbon offsetting of trees is great and all, but at the end of the day, there are groups and communities and people out there who are constantly lobbying this. There is Stop Ecocide. Who else have we got?
Oh gosh, there's so many. So
Renewable World.
Other than the ones that we've got as well, there's also companies like Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth. There are lots, and they're often nationally focused, which means that we mostly know the UK ones. But nonetheless, there are lots of really positive organisations that you could donate to, which you could do as an instead of. The fact is that we're able to make a positive impact on our world and push our way towards sustainability in ways other than just carbon.
I don't want anyone to think that I'm coming at this from a scientific and completely correct point of view here. This is just from my limited knowledge as a person. I personally think that that there isn't one that currently does carbon offsetting for that push back against what we've currently got going on. But if you had to do one or the other, realistically, the amount of carbon you're putting into the atmosphere versus the impact their push has, I would say put that money into the push. Because until the governments change, until the people in power actually start pushing for sustainability, no matter how much carbon you offset with your small game, they are pumping so much more. You will never be able to offset their carbon until they change.
Regulations will do more quicker than any tree will.
Yeah, basically.
And the charities that you mentioned, I'm trying to find links on your Kickstarter to them, but if you have links to share, or one for the lobbying, if someone's feeling, you know what, I have some extra money that I could afford to put towards this.
So
I will drop you in Twitter.
Cool. But basically, the charities and such that we're working with, they aren't. So they are trying. What we tried with them is for them to be a sort of very varied means of approaching the situation from multiple angles. So, for example, Stop Ecocide absolutely is about getting environmental regulations and making ecocide as a thing a international crime. But similarly, we have like 2040, for example, 2040 team who are doing positive films and ways to open people's eyes to the situation and how to better overcome it.
They're educating the regular people, because is our push that will help with that.
Absolutely. Renewable World, for example, is setting up green energy infrastructure. The World Resources Institute is doing huge amounts of investment money into actual sustainable infrastructure in the developed world and in general, trying to make policymakers change from using what is called grey infrastructure, which utilizes lots of concrete, into green infrastructure, which more relies upon natural means of dealing with problems, such as growing a forest around a city will cool it by roughly 10 degrees during the summer, which is a significant drop in temperature in a city. So things like that, really positive steps forward. Thought for Food are another one who, are all about lobbying for the agriculture industry to change and finding more sustainable means of dealing with that. So all of these companies that we're working with are different approaches to deal with a very versatile problem.
Mm-mm. Alex says that's certainly food for thought.
Yes,
and before mentioning, the fact that, there is a whole 1% of things that a tiny proportion of people holds so much of the wealth, and a tiny proportion of companies are doing a lot of actual impact. And I would say, yes, a tiny proportion of individuals are also making the decisions that are making probably 99% of the impact.
There's one thing I want to say about that as well quickly before we move on, which is there seems to be 2 points of view on this. 99% of the issues we face here are from that 1%. Some people go, well, in that case, nothing I do matters. And other people go, well, in that case, I'm going to do everything I can to prove to them that they're wrong. And it's so easy to get swept up in the, well, I'm tiny, nothing I do will have any effect here. But actually, the more of us that go, okay, I'm not part of that 1%, but I'm going to do my bit anyway, the more pressure we put on them collectively. There are few of them and there are many of us. So as board game designers and developers, even doing something as small as going, I'm not going to plastic wrap my cards, I'm going to use a paper tie. That's a little push, and that's what we want people to do. It doesn't have to be carbon neutral. It doesn't even have to be 100% sustainable. Just do any small thing you can to make that push.
Yeah. So that people start thinking, why aren't the bigger companies doing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we want.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Because I know with photosynthesis, Blue Orange made a big point of, okay, all these materials are recycled, which is great.
Yes.
My understanding is that for wood and paper, it's not actually as important. I mean, the shrink around it and the little bags that they had inside are probably more impactful.
Yeah. So with wood and cardboard and such like that, the important thing is trying to get FSC certified wood or cardboard, because ultimately what that differentiates is, did my game and the materials my game has used, did they come from an active ecosystem? Have trees been cut down that animals depend on that have impacted an area, and as a result, did they go into my game? If you want no part of that, deforestation or ecosystem disruption, then by getting FSC certified materials for your wood and your card, you guarantee that's not the case. And that's fantastic, and that's something that we should try to make standard if we can.
Now, I would love, although I don't know how much time you have, it's already been over an hour, but clicking around this McKay carbon calculator, I have to admit that it is incredibly intimidating.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do I, how Yeah. Whoa.
So this is why we sort of say about, if you're doing a board game, focus on, well, it says that there's the tab for transport. Focus on the transport. How is it being transferred? So in this case, you've got, is it being transferred via plane? Okay, so that's international aviation. Is it being transferred via land, via truck? Okay, then it's heavy vehicle, and it's, all this sort of thing. So, you're looking for, what does my project apply to? You're looking at the ways in which the ways in which you apply to these calculators. And yes, it's very complicated because it's designed as a one-size-fits-all thing. And realistically speaking, nothing is one-size-fits-all. But yeah.
And I did click on the one that's called detailed, but even here I understand that probably there isn't the time to go into it 100%, but could you give a starting point if any independent publisher is watching this, and also to myself, how would we start thinking about this?
So first things first, if you're looking to do a card game or something that doesn't involve too many pieces, is relatively small, I would look to see if it's possible that you can manufacture in Europe or the UK. If you're UK based, obviously, because there's no point manufacturing in the UK if you're in Europe, but nonetheless.
Or in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Yeah, a local manufacturer will always massively decline how much carbon is put in from your game. And so I think the thing to look out for from there is, how far is it going? And furthermore, how many people is it going to? So you could probably quite easily say, okay, so if it's going to America, then if it's you'll get a notification on your sort of shipping manifest. Your package is going from Portsmouth to I don't know, New York, let's say, for example, and you'll know that. And so as a result, you can go, okay, so it's going from there to there. This is the distance. This is the mileage. Then you go, right, what fuel do these sorts of ships use? And you go, okay, that's fine. What's the emissions of that fuel? Right, so we know that it's this much per mile in terms of emissions. And then you
could we do a quick calculation based on, right now, I know there's about 500 parcels going from me to various parts of UK. Let's assume, like, I saw that there's a large number based in London, which makes sense. There are lots of people living here, and I think it was more than 10% in London. But let's say that on average they're around the border. Let's say around that place around the Scottish border, where people used to go to get married. Anyway, let's say it's Dumfries. That feels like it's going to be around a sensible average. How would I use these tools to calculate?
So you probably wouldn't use that one.
I have found a better one for you. I will just
going to drop it in for you, and you can put it up.
Because this one is specifically for shipping. That one was just for a bit of everything, whereas that one's for shipping.
So that, feel free to link it in. So when your game is manufactured, Bez, you would have gotten a rundown from your manufacturer that says, this is how many cartons there are, this is how much weight there is, etc. Right? So each carton weighs this much.
It weighs 40 kilograms because it's only a card game, so it's not going to weigh much, and there's 500 copies. So
sure.
I'm probably being generous.
It weighs about 150 grams times 1,000. So let's say it's 0.15 times. Sorry, math's not working this morning.
No, that's okay.
It's fine.
Grab the little calculator. So say those numbers again.
150 grams. That's being kind of generous. And 1,000. So actually,
So
So that would be
150 kilograms.
Would that be 150 kilograms or would that be 15?
Yeah, it would be 150 kilograms. You're right.
Okay.
So that's
So it was it UK only, wasn't
it? Yes. So this shipment is first. It's coming to me actually, and so I guess I have to do that calculation and then the additional calculation to go from me to around the place.
So this, I'd just quickly like to say, your best bet in terms of calculating it is to basically go, so it's coming to you, that's one calculation, you've got that distance to work out, that's fine. So you get that distance, so do you know offhand where your games were actually made?
In the Midlands, let's say, and when I say Midlands, I don't mean the middle of the UK, I mean the middle of England.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a really weird thing that people say. Yeah, anyway. So let's call it Sheffield.
Sheffield. Okay, so we got Sheffield to, if you want to name your nearest town for privacy's sake.
I'm happy to say I live in N15.
N15. Okay. Cool. So, yeah, that is.
Let's have a look.
Just calculating the data.
So
it is
that is
9.80
kilograms. My calculation reckons of
CO2. Yeah.
So I see 181 miles. Is so.
For me, it's 221 kilograms.
Oh, so you do it here from place to place. So from Sheffield, UK to N15, London, UK. And then
that's it.
Emissions calculation for
it's not refrigerated, so it's not extra.
And type automatic. What? I'll just leave that there, I guess.
Sure. And then transfer
data.
And then calculate.
Yep. And then again.
Weird.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, there it's at the bottom.
So there we go.
Yeah, okay. So it is 9.8 kilograms.
That's it. So that's the amount that has been made from that journey. And then what I would probably say is, let's say you've got, from you, there's going to be a lot of packages going to Manchester, and there's going to be a whole bunch of packages going to, I don't know, Glasgow. And you would then calculate the distance that those packages would go to those main hubs, because they would be going as one shipment, as it were. So then you would add all those calculations together and you would go, right, that's
okay. I was thinking that you would just work out an average and then multiply it by 500. So if I was to say 0.2, because that includes the thing, and then let's say from me to Dumfries is actually kind of overestimating the average distance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then if I wanted to do this, and then I multiply that by 500, which would make it 15, and then 2 to the right, left. So that's 15 kilos to go out.
So good news for you then, Bez.
So that makes it 25.
Yeah.
One tree will offset that carbon when fully grown.
Yeah.
Because and a fully grown tree offsets 21 kilograms of carbon a year.
Oh no, but I had 25.
Oh, there we go. Okay, well that's
2 trees.
2 trees. So it's yeah. So basically, the reason why initially I didn't say to do that times 500 is because most of the time when you have a large amount of packages going to a singular hub or place, something like that, they will all go in one van and they will do one journey rather than one journey for each of those packages.
Okay.
So
it's probably an overestimation. It probably is closer to 16, maybe 18 kilograms.
Yeah. But nonetheless, no harm in more trees.
And so let's say I wanted to make this carbon neutral. And the thing is, like, planting a tree, when you say one fully grown tree is this much, like, when you plant a tree, there's no guarantee that that tree is definitely going to grow up, is there?
Okay, so there isn't unless you do it through a proper
Tree
and
planting initiative.
yeah. So basically, there's been a lot of controversy around carbon offsetting with trees because there's been a bunch of cases where someone will go, yeah, we'll plant a bunch of trees. And they plant a bunch of trees, and then just about as they get to the point where they're starting to mature, they cut them all down and they send them to biofuel, which biofuel is a really nice way of saying we toss a bunch of wood chip trees into a furnace and turn it into power, which is awful. So your means of offsetting has suddenly been turned into suddenly huge amounts more carbon than it was in the first place. So as you can imagine, that caused a huge amount of controversy. So if you're going to carbon offset, you need to do some research into the places you're using, because that's really important. You need to know.
Well, you've done the research, so why don't you just tell us?
Okay, sure. So
Tree Sisters.
Tree Sisters is who we're using, yeah.
Okay, and can you share a link quickly?
Definitely.
Yeah. Give me a second while I type. Tree Sisters. For the record as well, Bez, the link that you just calculated through also has carbon offsetting as an option on that website. Whether or not that is the good type of carbon offsetting or not, I do not know because we've not looked into it.
Yeah, but nonetheless.
Okay.
There you go. I have sent you the link to Tree Sisters.
And I will share this. So if I wanted to say, okay, as a gesture, I will plant 2 trees via here. And while I'm sharing this, how much would that even cost?
So you can you go to Grow Forests and
then you go donate here.
Donate here. How many trees you could fund as a monthly donor?
Oh yeah, there we go.
So you could, for example, you could go, well, okay, sure, it's only 2 trees, but you know what? As a goodwill gesture, I could. So that's £2, for example. That will fund you 5 trees. So it's shockingly cheap, but ultimately that £2 still goes towards really good initiatives. It still goes towards really positive things. And if you feel you want to donate more, you absolutely can. There's nothing stopping you. You know, we were talking at the beginning about how can we make a carbon negative game. And I suppose the answer to that would be, you know, if you're going to...
Again, this is carbon negative in the scientific sense of capturing more carbon than we are putting out.
Exactly, yes. Well clarified. So as a result, you would look into trying to, let's say double whatever your offsets would...
I've already done that.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you can sort of say that. If you're also doing all the other sustainability elements, then you know you can say that your game is...
For sure, as you say, I've not checked in with, are these cards actually plastic coated? Were these cards recycled? I mean, they probably weren't from recycled sources. Were they FSC? They probably weren't.
Well, that's okay, because you know what, everybody learns.
To be blatantly clear here, our first game, Pugs in Mugs, is not 100% sustainable. We didn't do that even then.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Like, I mean,
of course it is.
Are you planning to then do this for future projects, like after Earthrising, that you give 50% of your profits to other charities?
Probably not with the profits, for the simple reason that the profits with Earthrising go where they go because of the topic of the game.
Yeah.
It's the whole point is that not only are you learning and educating yourself whilst you're having fun with Earthrising, but by buying it, you are already putting good into the world. And to be honest, on the topic of sustainability, giving 50% of your profits away as a small board gaming business isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
We won't have many future games if we keep doing that.
Yeah. But nonetheless, it's important to us that we have that kind of impact with Earthrising, because that's what it's all about. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to consider donating certain percentages with other games where it's relevant and where it's necessary. We feel it's necessary.
And just to clarify, that 50%, is that just from the profits from the Kickstarter, or will that be going forward somehow calculating the profits of the game sold down the line?
So it's the profits of the first run.
Okay, so everything from the first run.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So obviously the Kickstarter will only sell so much of those, and the more we get with the Kickstarter, the bigger that first run is.
Yeah.
So as a result, the more impact we have immediately, the bigger the impact we have overall.
Basically, all sales from the first edition of Earthrising will 50% will be going to those charities.
That's it.
And that is 50% of post-fulfillment profits, to be clear.
Yeah.
And that is a fantastic thing. I would love to chat to you for, days and days and weeks about this stuff, because it really matters. But hopefully, even after your Kickstarter, we can have you back on. Speaking of this Kickstarter, obviously I've linked already, but for those who didn't see, please do go and check out this game, which is, I haven't played it, but it's just fantastic what's being done. And most games that I back, for the record, if someone's following me on Kickstarter, I do actually just back for $1, because it's a way of supporting that person. And quite often I don't need loads of new games, even if it seems really cool. It's like, do I need it? I mean, I would love to play this a couple of times, but do I need to own a copy? No, I don't. Do you know what I mean?
Well, maybe we can play digitally at some point, because we do have 2 fully functioning digital
Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia
screen top.
is
not tabletop yet.
Okay. Maybe, yeah. I do have, I kind of found them, quite nerve-wracking for various reasons. But what was I get? Yeah, I've backed for the one where you get the education, so you kind of get all the digital material of, hey, this is what the game's about, and here's all the lessons and stuff, which feels like a really valuable thing. And of course, knowing that half of that money after the 10% that goes to Kickstarter and credit card companies is going to go to, charity, that's also was a strong motivator for me.
Well, thanks very much for your support. It's really appreciated.
You're very welcome. And I would, as always, remind people that if there is something out there on Kickstarter that you appreciate what they're doing, a £1 pledge does give way more than £1. So even if you just back for £1, other people see that you backed, and also the algorithm takes it higher. It's kind of like a way of saying, you know what, maybe I don't need the game, or maybe I can't afford the game, but you know what, I like what you're doing, so good on you.
Yeah. You're
not like a typical board game thing. You go above and beyond a wee bit, so good on you. At this point, I do have to start wrapping up, so I am going to, as is typical, before we do, I will ask anyone watching, and also Ree and Laurie, the guests, over to you. What are you up to? You can say, but only if you want to. What are you doing today? Is there something that you're going to play? Is there something that you're going to work on? Is that something that you're going to ponder? Is there something that you're going to wonder?
So, I know 2 things I'm going to be doing today, because I'm taking the rest of the day off. First, I'm going to be playing a whole bunch of video games, because I deserve it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be planning my next roleplay session.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I, however, am not going to be able to get a day off, because that's not in my future.
I mean, at least you've got 2 people who are really committed to the Kickstarter. This is the joy of having more than one person kind of leading the charge.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't understand how people do it solo. It must be exhausting.
Well, if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice.
Well, no, absolutely,
True.
of course. But yeah, it still must be exhausting.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I'm going to be writing our next update for our Kickstarter. I try to make the various dev blogs really informative about both the real world situation and how Earthrising reflects that. And so yeah, this next one is about the fun topic of ecological collapses. However, the majority of it is going to be focused on how we need to change the dialogue that surrounds these and make it really a much more positive and action-orientated discourse than it currently is.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I had a few work-related things to do. I might draw a prototype because I want to draw a new prototype for a game about grabbing creatures that are totally different and watching out for turnips. So basically, I've worked out in the spreadsheet that currently there's about 14% chance of any card being something that you can pick up. Any non-turnip cards, I should say. The turnips are completely different. But I'm going to try and make a brand new deck, which raises that probability to about 33%, which might be too much because that means that every 3 cards that's on the table, it's like, oh, one of them matches nothing. If there's any match, then you lose. It's got to be totally different. That's the point. Anyway, so I'm going to try and make this new thing, and then I might do a solo test, which is not going to be a pleasurable game to play. It's just going to be how likely is it, just kind of gets a feel of it. Imagine that there's someone collecting cards at the same time. And yeah, so that might be a thing that I do, and just talking about it, it's like, yeah, I feel motivated to do that. I should probably work out what's going on for Saturday and chase people up, but I'm also going to try and do some emails. I feel like right now, the number one email, if I get nothing else done, is emailing some people from Aconite Books who might be future guests, some authors who are writing books about terraforming Mars and pandemic and stuff like that, which is really interesting how they turn it into books. I thought that was quite interesting to talk to them about that.
Nice.
And then if I've got energy after that, if I don't, then that's okay. I'm just going to... I get to brainstorm with Katie. So Katie Allred, we've arranged a date at 5 p.m. UK time today. We're going to brainstorm a game about... it's a pretty dark topic, but yeah, it was for a competition. And yeah, then if I've got any energy left after that, which I probably might not, now I've kind of said it out loud, but I would really like to send out all the emails to the LDEC contest entrants. That is what I want / need to do. Alex says, I'm going to make some puzzles, do some chores, and go out for a little walk later. That sounds fantastic. That's a very nice day. And I want to say thank you to everyone. This has been a lovely chat. Major thanks to Laurie, Ree, both of you. It's been really useful to kind of talk through this. And some of the calculations that you talk through afterwards, it almost seems like maybe we could have like a regular chats every few weeks, even after the Kickstarter's been and gone, but just talk about how it's going, and maybe you could give me some sort of advice. That's what I'm cheekily asking you to do. To kind of if you do all the research, just tell me your results. And because now I know to, I mean, frankly, this is like what you're wanting. That's now I know to donate to Tree Sisters. It's like, you know what? I am going to donate that £2 because it's like, why not?
Yeah.
And then I can, but the first printing has already happened. And frankly, there are already stickers in there that I would have to think about, okay, what's that impact? But even having like, okay, putting these questions into the head, thinking about it has been massively useful. But we did talk about streaming, the recent stream that you did. We talked about playing games, about Happy Pigs, Bonanza, and Carcassonne. We talked about tiny, tiny little ducks. We talked about having no barriers, no gatekeeping. Don't say, oh, you didn't do this, therefore you're terrible. But if you're a big company, then you probably have the resources and you could be doing more. It almost seems like the bigger a company you are, frankly, the more as a percentage you could be putting into doing good rather than just doing well. If you have, we talked about companies, we talked about FSC certification, we talked about the cutting and the printing and the shaping and the recycled cardboard and potentially looking into recycled baggies. We talked about, we did a quick calculation for myself. We decided that it takes about 10 kilos, 9.8 kilos of carbon to get it to me, and maybe 15 kilos of carbon to get it from me to everyone around the UK. And for all of that, it only costs £2. But then at the same time, I can't say, okay, I've paid the £2, therefore I'm clean. You know, that would be incredibly disingenuous if that's what I started doing, because the waterproof mailers, where did that envelope go? Here it is. You know, there is plastic in this. How do I account for that? How do I account for all the other bits? There is a lot more questions, but we have answered this one question, and it has been fantastic. And it seems like the carbon offsetting is actually, you can very easily and surprisingly cheaply. So if it feels like now that I know, and the 2 links that you gave, this carboncare.org/en/CO2 emissions calculator, you can sort of see what I usually go to. And where was the other ones? Tree Sisters. There we go. treesisters.org. And with those 2 bits of knowledge, it's like, boom, it's so much easier. So thank you for giving us that. And I want to say, just thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who was watching. Thank you, everyone who's part of this. Thank you, Oliver and Alex and Amadeus and everyone who jumped in.
Yeah.
And
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Alex, I think the difference is that that's a much smaller distance.
We hope so. Be sad if your commute was that long.
Yeah,
if you were commuting to Sheffield every day, then that would be problematic.
Yeah. For you also, like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not...
a long way.
I mean, I guess if you're a trucker or something.
Yeah,
true.
But then, really, if you're a trucker, if you're employed by a company and you're driving for work, I would kind of say that the company should have the responsibility of offsetting that.
It's
Whereas
on them.
if you're a taxi driver and you want it to be green, because you are self-employed, that's counted as you running your own business. I think as soon as you're self-employed, then you have to be more accountable. I think that's a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get a hybrid car. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. That can make the difference.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, if you want to check me out, I am obviously Stuff by Bez everywhere on Instagram and Twitter and whatnot. And where do you like to be found, Ree and Laurie?
So we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are pretty much SDR Games everywhere. Come and chat to us.
And that is the main website being sdrgames.studios. There it go.
That's the one.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so, once more, thank you very much. If people want to check out my future streams, then look there. There's nothing special happening for the next while. But once I get special guests, I will put it into that little thing to say, this is what's happening. And then, but normally, it's just going to be me chatting. Tomorrow, Alex made an exciting puzzle for me, which I started, but then I stopped because I thought, oh, this would be a fun thing to do on stream. So I might do that tomorrow.
Nice.
I forget again. But yeah, it's just going to be me talking about whatever occurs to me. And I want to say thank you very much, everyone. You are wonderful, glorious people, unless you aren't, in which case, that's okay. Just be the best you can be. Just be the best you can be. And lots of love. let me check on Twitch for... Oh, Idol Michael is doing some magic. And so let us check out our friend Idol Michael, and feel free to copy-paste some or all of this raid message if you are on Twitch. If you are watching on another channel, then, or after the fact, then this will make no sense to you. But all I will say now is, as always, unless you have any final words.
I don't think so. Do you?
No, all good.
Bye
Well
bye.
then, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go goodbye. Bye, bye, bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. And bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.